being the author of the PhoneGap push plugin, and he's currently leading the work on PWAs here at PhoneGap.
Spoilers, dude. Seriously.
Oh, sorry.
I'll just hand it over to Tommy now.
My bad.
Yeah, so thank you all for showing up today. It's great to see you all. This is the second time that I've ever presented on Tommy's laptop. The first time it went pretty good. Hopefully it goes just as well today.
Play jazz.
So play smooth jazz. Yes, exactly. No, that didn't work. That's not going to be good at all. What I really want to talk about today is looking forward to where we're going as a community and kind of some of the functionality that we're trying to add. But of course, I can't talk about the future unless I actually kind of explain the past, because you kind of can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. So you may have seen this slide before. This is our former colleague, Brian LaRue, one of the main guys in PhoneGap from way back. Oh, it didn't change. Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Professionalism right out the window.
Oh, shit. I don't know, dude. I don't know why it's not.
Okay. There we go. Now it changed. All right, so rewind back. This is Brian LaRue, and you may have seen this slide before. It's pretty popular, but you know, the purpose of PhoneGap from the very moment that it was created was for it to cease to exist at some point in time. We've always intended to implement the W3C specifications, and eventually the browser vendors would get around to implementing those in Chrome and Edge and Firefox and Safari, all that stuff, and we'd be able to stop maintaining this stuff. And as you can see, that quote is from over 5 years ago, and we've been at this for 7 or 8 years now. So why hasn't PhoneGap ceased to exist at this point? I think that is a really good question. And if you were at PhoneGap Day EU last year, you may remember Remy Sharp giving a talk called State of the Gap. And in that, he talked about how so many of the APIs that PhoneGap, Apache Cordova provide have alternatives in the browser right now. So that's great. We can start replacing those, but there's a bit of a problem. Many of the APIs that we've done were based upon the then current W3C specification. But as you know, those standards have changed wildly since those original implementations. So you may be asking yourself a question: was it a bad idea to not wait until those specifications were hardened and implemented in the browser? And in my opinion, no. It was a great idea for us to jump in and do this immediately, because in a lot of cases, the PhoneGap Apache Cordova platform was the first platform to implement these specifications. And that was able to feed back a lot of wonderful feedback to the W3C on their APIs to see whether or not that they should be continued or not. I, unfortunately, was the first person to implement the Contacts API on Android. No, do not clap for that. Do not clap for that. That is a horrible API. I don't like it at all, but we did it, and we gave them feedback, and you may notice there is no more contact specification in the W3C. It's just a bad idea. So now, we're in a situation right now where our APIs are slightly out of date from what's in the W3C, what's in the browser. So where do we go from here? If you're on the Apache Cordova mailing list, you may have seen some discussions lately about the core plugin audit. So what we've done is we've created this issue to track everything, and it's CB 12708. That is the giant issue that tracks everything. But from there, there's a link to every plugin has an issue where we're discussing what we should do with it. So this is all being done completely in the open, so please join the mailing list, go into the issue tracker, comment on these things. We want to get feedback from all of you, so please join in. So what does this mean with regards to the plugins? Well, some of them we're going to sunset because there's really no point in having them anymore. If you've taken a look at the Device Motion API, this is the way that things are done right now using the Cordova Device Motion plugin. That was current as of 5 years ago, but if you take a look at what's available today, you can go into almost any browser, and if you add an event listener for Device Motion, you get the same data. So there's no point for you to have in your Cordova PhoneGap application the Device Motion plugin when the browser already implements it for you. So in those cases, we're going to be stopping maintaining those plugins. They'll still stick around for you to use them. We're not deleting them, but we're not going to continue any kind of continued maintenance on it. Instead, what we're going to do is document how to move from the older APIs to the new APIs so that you folks can move forward. Another thing is we need to update quite a number of the plugins. So we're going to go through some major API changes. The camera plugin that we have, there was no camera specification back when we were doing things, so we came up with this API by ourselves. So what you can see there is we have navigator.camera.getPicture, and that's not really current. What you would do in today's browser is first you would use getUserMedia in order to get the media stream for the camera, and then you can use this new functionality called image capture. And what we'll be noticing is as we move from the older API to the new API that a lot of the options that are in camera get picture will be available in image capture. There's a number of options you can do there. But don't worry, you don't have to switch to these new plugins right away. If you do pinning in your config XML or your package.json, since we're using semver, so you can pin to the older version and not get completely screwed when the new camera plugin is released. And finally, we're going to integrate some of those plugins. So there's a number of things that really just don't make sense as plugins anymore. They belong in the platform themselves. Two ones that we're really talking about are the splash screen and the console. So I don't know anybody who doesn't immediately add the console plugin to their hybrid application. If you want to see console logs on iOS, you kind of need it. So those things are just going to become part of the platforms. Now, you may ask yourself, why are we doing all of this? Like, what is the impetus behind all of these sorts of things? And the answer really is progressive web applications. So today, you can build a native-like application with web technologies that runs on Firefox, Chrome, and on Edge. And I think that is a fantastic thing. And I really recommend that people look forward to doing that. So what's the problem with that? What is missing? There is something missing in that previous slide. Right, Safari. So right now, Safari is lagging a bit behind some of the things. Back in 2015, they came out with a 5-year plan in order to implement a lot of new functionality. Well, they got fetch done, so that's good. Other than that, they're lagging a bit behind. If Raymond Camden was here, he would talk about their support of IndexedDB because it's been bad, very bad. And one of the key things for progressive web apps is service workers. So that is on Safari's roadmap, but no idea when it's going to happen. So overall, right now, I would give Apple a D- on that roadmap. However, WWDC is around the corner, and sometimes, you know, Apple's like a university student who waits until the last second to slide that paper underneath the professor's door. So possibly, they will have an A+ in a couple of months. But while we're waiting for that, one of the things that I'm working on right now is called PhoneGap plugin PWA. And what we're actually doing is going through, finding all of the APIs that are used by progressive web apps, and seeing where they're supported in the browser. And when they're not supported in the browser, we're doing polyfills for it. So we've had some success recently. We've rewritten the battery plugin just as a test case. So we're now using the new promise-based API. That's great. We implemented the local notification plugin just from scratch. And if anybody uses the WebShare plugin from Eddie Verbruggen, we send a pull request over to Eddie, which he gratefully merged. And Eddie, hi, I can see Eddie in the audience. It's great. So now it's fully compliant with the W3C spec so that if you were using the Share API in the browser, you'll be able to use it in your Cordova application as well. So what we want to get to is in the future, you're developing progressive web apps in your browser. You're running them in your browser. Everything's working great. You'll be able to deploy that to Firefox, Chrome, Edge, run it on like 80% of the browsers that are out there. And where things aren't working, you can deploy that as a native application. Or maybe your marketing department comes to you and says, oh, you know, that's really great that you have this progressive web app, but we really need to get in the App Store. And you'll be like, oh, OK, cool. You'll run a command to package your progressive web app as a Cordova application. And I think that's where we really want to go to. So just remember, as I leave you, let's continue to push the web forward. Thanks.
son.